Hey Reddit. What stupid myth do too many people believe? Like and subscribe to support the channel. And share your stupidest myth in the comments below. Goldfish have short-term memory. Actually, goldfish can remember things up to a year. So many goldfish myths. It's a myth that they'll only grow to fit the size of their tank. They can definitely outgrow tanks. And both fancy and common goldfish routinely grow up to 7 or 8 plus in indoor aquariums. In outdoor ponds where they have large volumes of water to dilute irritants. Common goldfish have been reported to grow up to 18 inches. People also believe that goldfish have naturally short lifespans. This is wrong. They have unnaturally short lifespans because people kill them through neglect, incorrect care. The average lifespan of a goldfish is 5 to 10 years. The longest-lived goldfish on record lived to 43. You'll notice all of these myths are good excuses to keep your goldfish in a tank as small as you see fit. We talking about the snack cracker or the snack that remembers back? Spot reduction of fat. People think that doing sit-ups will burn fat around your belly area. But if I always put the weight on in my belly, shouldn't I always fucking lose it in my belly? Come on life. Be reasonable. Unfortunately, the first to get picked up is the last to get dropped off. I'm telling you, I have a six-pack under all this flab. Well, yay. That human beings only use 10% of their brain. Good grief, I can't listen to people who say this is true. The worst thing is, my teacher in elementary school thinks that humans only use 10 to 15% of their brain. And the reason Albert Einstein, for example, was super smart is that he used about 30% of his brain. The biggest amount of bullshit I've ever heard. And the person saying it is a science teacher. A neurologist explained it as, humans only use 10% of their brains the way a traffic light only uses 1/3 of its lights. We use all 100%. Just not all at once. We actually have evidence of what happens when we use 100% of our brains. It's a grand mal epileptic seizure. 10 to 15% at a time. All of it is used. Just not at the same time. You wouldn't want to have 100% firing all the time, as that would be horribly overwhelming. Not to mention the fuel costs. Oddly enough, his brain was larger than average in the math areas. He may have been using more mass and a higher percentage. But it's because of an oddity of his brain makeup. This is one of those things where the more you know about it, the more pop culture gets right. Despite pop culture not really understanding it at all. Some of the ones I know do. You won't get in trouble if you tell the truth. You what? You said you wouldn't get mad. I'm laughing. Chuckling really. You get told this from the time you were a little kid. Right up there with being able to trust a police officer. I once walked right up to a cop one time and handed him a bag of weed I found. It was at a place where kids were. So, well, guess what? I got arrested. What happened after? Shaving makes your hair grow back thicker. But this is half true because hair naturally tapers out, but when you shave it, the thicker base as it moves out gives the whole thing a thicker appearance until time thins it back out again. Also, it is known that stress against skin releases tryptosone, one of the body's sex hormones that prompts hair growth, among other things, meaning that a poor shave can actually improve hair coverage. Source: I made all that stuff up. Why the frick did you actually make me believe it? A lot of people don't know that because it's not true. A favorite way to end some clever shiz I just made up for a laugh. I wish this were true. I'd shave my head every night. That if you're an organ donor, then doctors won't try hard to save you and might let you die. I'm a doctor. When I'm treating a patient, whether the patient is an organ donor or not never crosses my mind. I will genuinely have no idea. And even if I did, why would I want to sacrifice my patient for some random other patient across the country? Surely that would just make me look like a shiz doctor. Right? We all know the reality is that you just break into people's homes and harvest their organs like that Monty Python skit. And then when they present for a missing organ, you harvest another organ from a different sleeping donor. I had to explain this to my dad fairly recently. I said, basically, so if you're in a car accident and unconscious and paramedics race you to the hospital to perform surgery for internal bleeding or whatever, is the surgeon going to have someone rifle through your stuff to find out whether your license has an organ donor marker on it to determine how hard they're gonna work to save your life? And what's hard in terms of effort for saving someone's life? And is everyone in the operating room in on the scam so they don't say anything either during or after when the surgeon's like, look at all these open blood vessels LMAO? My grandpa recently asked to have a DNA CPR put into place. He's terminally ill. He was in hospital at the time with pneumonia and the staff started to get him ready to go home not long after it was finally put into place. My grandma's now convinced that the DNA CPR means they won't treat him for anything anymore. Like they're just going to let him suffer a slow death. She doesn't seem to get that it's only for CPR. No other treatment will be withheld. That if you put a frog in tepid water and slowly raise the temperature, the frog won't try to escape and save itself when the temp gets too high. Great for illustrating certain points. But completely untrue. It's true if you cut their brains out first. Which is what the study that originated this myth did. How is this not just murdering frogs and then putting them in hot water? Like, where does the question pop up if they'll try to escape? They're dead. Their brains were cut out. The most annoying one to me is the idea that in America you pay the percent from your highest tax bracket on the whole of your income. I've had people brag to me about how they know to clock out early on certain days so that they don't make enough to go up a tax bracket, as if you would make less money by making more money. I've heard of people literally turning down raises because they think they'll make more with their current salary. I wonder if the company offering them the raise feels a duty to explain to them that that's not how it works. I guess it's not their job to educate the employees on taxes. So who knows? If I was a boss and an employee did that, I would rethink them as an employee. Yes. I work in construction and 90% of my coworkers believe this. Or that they think overtime hours are taxed more than regular hours. I had a guy tell me that after you work 58 hours, you pay more in taxes than you take home. Totally nuts. This happens to hourly guys because of how withholding is calculated. When you get a check with a ton of extra OT hours, the system can assume that you make that rate for the entire year, and adjusts withholding way up accordingly. So, it would look like you paid way more taxes than you should for one check. You will be made whole at tax return time. But I can at least see how people come to this conclusion if they don't really think it all the way through. Fire sprinklers. They don't all go off by pulling a fire alarm. They're individually heat activated. Also, you really don't want whatever nasty shiz that's been in them for years coming out. Yes, I started in facilities maintenance. Big buildings have water reserves for the sprinkler systems, concrete cisterns, tanks. Very few buildings I ever worked with drained, cleaned, rotated this water. Getting hit with the sprinkles was begging for Legionnaires or Staphylococcus. Bermuda Triangle. For any given same-sized sea area there is statistically the same amount of missing ships and planes. Wow, I wasn't ready for that one. If I recall, Bermuda is the point of the triangle because it's a popular stopping point on the way to, from the Caribbean and Miami. So ships from Europe sail to Bermuda and then fan out in roughly a triangle shape to the rest of the area. And ships going east converge on it before heading to Europe. It's just a busy corner of the sea, so naturally there's a lot of wrecks. And a surprising number of ships and planes that vanished in the triangle. Sank, crashed for perfectly understood reasons. Went missing for a few hours. Then were found perfectly safe and sound. Sank, crashed, went missing nowhere near the triangle, in one case in the Pacific. Never actually existed in the first place. Now that's spooky. You can suck venom out of a snake bite. My cat bit a friend who was cat-sitting for me. He tried to suck out the venom and spent several days in hospital with sepsis. Cat venom is the worst. What drives me crazy about this is people think they can suck out venom in the time it takes for the person's heart to beat. If that puncture wound reached any vasculature, which is basically hard to miss by the time the heart beats, the poison has already moved on. It's not like blood is standing still waiting for a cab. Arthur Morgan could do it, and that's good enough for me. That sugar cane grows faster on sand. Has Minecraft been lying to me all these years? Nope. It grows just as fast in Minecraft sand and dirt. Screw it. I'll use sand anyway. I like the look. People think that if you ask an undercover cop is they an undercover cop, they have to tell the truth. An undercover cop does not have to reveal that they are a cop, even if the person asks. I don't think I've ever heard this outside of comedy movies. I'm not sure anyone actually believes this. I've seen enough to Catch a Predator to know people really believe that. It made that scene in Breaking Bad with Badger and that skinny actor funny though. To put it broadly, cops are allowed to lie to you. That blood is blue in your veins but turns red when exposed to the air. Total bullshit. Blood is always red. It just goes from dark crimson to bright, almost pink depending on how much oxygen is present in your blood. The blue color of your veins is ~, just that, the color of the vein tissue, ~, because of how light shifts as it passes through the skin. If someone persists, ask them what color the blood is when they have it drawn. Because it's not in contact with the air. Hint, it's red. My high school science teacher taught that blood was blue. And no amount of arguing would change her mind. Thank God she's retired now and no longer misinforming kids. My high school history teacher taught us that Mussolini was hanged by the Americans in Italy in 1941. You get arthritis by cracking your knuckles. All it is just gas bubbles popping. Also, some guy did a long-term experiment several decades I think where he constantly cracked all knuckles in one hand and left the other one alone. After the experiment was over, they took X-rays and tests to find that both hands were practically identical in terms of condition. Good to know I quit my habit of cracking my knuckles for nothing. That must have taken so much self-control. Imagine the first cracks after the trial ended. Too many people believe that porcupines can shoot their quills when they actually have to jab you with their quills. Darn cartoons and their dramatic sneezes. Next you're going to tell me that bees don't form a giant floating pitchfork before they come after me. Lol, they can only shoot quills when they're at full health. That's why it's important to get at least one quick hit in, even if it's a light attack, to disable their ranged capability. Should be an easier fight at that point. Despite what many people think Albert Einstein never failed math. The confusion likely comes from the grading system. But this myth has been around for a long time and used by people as a sort of motivation. When he was shown a clipping from Ripley's Believe It or Not, where that myth originated, he responded, "I never failed in mathematics. Before I was 15 I had mastered differential and integral calculus." Source: correct. His work ethic was spotty, no less than is typical for a teenager at times. But he always made decent grades. And by the time he was 15, everyone could see that he was brilliant. Also, he wasn't just a patent clerk in Switzerland. That was a highly prestigious job. Back then, it wasn't academia, but it had gravity. Yup. I believe a big part of the myth of Einstein's mediocre career before his earth-shattering discoveries is that the word clerk is used differently in different cultures. First, he wasn't an office administrator like an administrative assistant, but was actively involved in understanding inventions and innovations in order to patent them. Second, he worked at the patent office starting at age 21 while pursuing his PhD. It wasn't like he struggled in life as a failed, crazy scientist. By age 29 he was already recognized as a leading scientist with a faculty position at the University of Bern. He was not like too many people believed. Some failure or scientific outcast who only received recognition and acceptance by the scientific community late in life. He was very much a part of mainstream academia since his youth.